Ridge Racer was one of the very first games I owned for the original PlayStation, and moving on from the 16-bit era to the 32-bit and specifically a full 3D polygon affair such as this game, Ridge Racer was utterly mind-blowing in its day. If you was a bit like me and seen several different computers and consoles come and go in your life at this point and then upgraded to this, you was more than likely, just like myself, utterly blown away by the realism of it all at the time. Ridge Racer began life in the arcade and Namco released it in 1993. It was powered by the Namco System 22 arcade system. This was a very powerful board in its day. You'll likely remember other games like Ridge Racer such as Alpine Racer, Time Crisis and Aquajet. These games and many more were also used in the same hardware. Yes, the System 22 had some powerhouse games under its belt. Going back to realism, well, Ridge Racer was well received in its day, with critics and reviewers in utter disbelief with its 3D texture mapped graphics, sound and drifting mechanics. It also had some criticism for its use of AI, but come on, this was 1993 and games of this magnitude were in their few. Ridge Racer truly was the ultimate way to experience 3D arcade racing at this time in history. So in retrospective, sure, this game by today's standards is relatively small in terms of track sizes and its few courses that you could race, but at the time of its release, who knew any different? This game was the be-all and end-all at the time, and it remains like this for several years to come after its initial release. We have a few cars to select from before races begin, and we can even choose a song, totally Outrun style, wouldn't you say? In addition to this, we could either choose to play an automatic or manual transmission and are greeted with what appears to be digitised sprites of a young lady and man who camps you into the race. Once we begin races, that typical 1990s dance beat music makes an appearance and is off to drift around corners and making checkpoints before our time runs out. Yes, although basic, this is an arcade classic which holds many memories for many people around the world. We of course have a good few ports of Ridge Racer to get through today, so let's find out which home conversion of Namco's 1993 big hitter was the best one you could have played at the time. This really shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. This is the zeebo's mobile phone port of Ridge Racer. Many of you might not be too familiar with zeebo, but let me give you a quick rundown of what this system was. It was a very short-lived Brazilian digital-based educational system that could also play games, which was around between 2009 and then discontinued in 2011. Although it got a phenomenal version of Double Dragon, many other games failed miserably, and this was one of them. The music is god-awful. The visuals aren't much better here either. This is pretty much a demake of the game itself. It really is shockingly bad, and playing it is even worse. I'll leave you with 9 seconds of the gameplay itself with that terrible music. Enjoy. This is the PlayStation version, which also was a launch title for the console itself. Japan got it first in 1994, and 10 months later the rest of the world got it in 1995. Now, first and foremost, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this port. This is the version I and probably most other people are most familiar with, but in a ranking video we do need to have something considered as the least best version and through its pure basicness. I'm afraid to say that this version that I once played more than most other games on my PlayStation had to come in one of the last places. I'll say that this version is as basic as it gets, meaning that other versions had more enhanced ports featuring many different options and customizations. I mean, this version truly is of its time. Those polygons really do stand at a mile here, but just remember this wasn't the case at the time. This game truly blew myself and my family away when it's released with its pure sheer realism. If I really want to get nitty and gritty and comparing this with the arcade game itself, then we could just say that this ran at 30 FPS, whereas the original game itself ran at 60. Obviously, the visuals themselves are nowhere near as great either, but remember, these satisfied us at the time. In terms of this version being fairly basic, Namco did give us an option to have an outside perspective of the car itself. There is also a total of 13 different cars to race as, but mainly these are unlocked as we play through the game. Initially we have 4 cars to choose from, each one with its own attributes. There is also a total of 8 courses, but these are all mainly different variations of the main course itself. Music wise it's different from the arcade game, and I'll leave this one by just saying this seriously reeks in 90s every way possible. This is Ridge Racer DS, which released in between 2004 and 2005, depending where you was in the world at the time. This was released to be a remake of a certain version which is also featured in this video. Now, this is totally debated, whereas some people will say that this is a little more of a remake of that particular game I just mentioned. The reason that being is that this DS game runs at 30 FPS with no noticeable frame drops at all, whereas the game it is said to be a remake of actually runs at a steady 60 FPS. It's not that the Nintendo DS wasn't capable of running games at this speed either, because the hardware certainly could do this. Critics of this version also criticise it on its original review days as having a lack of texture filtering. What this version did, which not many people liked, was introduce touchscreen controls, which many people weren't really too impressed with at the time. It also featured multiplayer capabilities too. I mean, looking back at this version, it's not a bad portable version, only it could have been much better than what it actually was. I also found that the coursing corners for drifting are almost narrow in some places. A real shame then that Nintendo software technology who developed this couldn't have gave it the faster 60 FPS treatment. Obviously, at this point of release, the source game itself was between 11 and 12 years old, and the world was getting more familiar with faster frames in portable gaming. We'll cover the original version of this so-called remake a little later in this video and go into its full details. Between 1998 and 1999, the world was introduced to Ridge Racer Type 4. This was an exclusive sequel for PlayStation and skipped the arcade entirely. One of the awesome features with this game was its promotional disc that had an enhanced version of the original Ridge Racer game known as Ridge Racer Turbo Mode. Now, graphically, this does remain the same. In fact, it is the same game that released as one of PlayStation's launch titles. But this version ran on par with the arcade game itself, a steady 60 FPS that is. And playing this version right next to the original is light years apart. This version is a hell of a lot more speedier, and you can really tell the difference when playing both the original release and this turbo mode together. If you did fancy playing the original PlayStation game after so many years, I'd honestly go for this turbo version instead, which came with Ridge Racer Type 4. The idea of emulating games from yesteryear on your modern day computer or portable device. Maybe you hate the thought of loading times of your favourite games and prefer to watch commentary videos or anything else retro related. Just Jamie Retro Realm is the ultimate channel for anybody who loves games from the golden age of arcade to home microcomputers as well as the console generations. From the 1970s to the 2000s, then this channel will have something that you'll love, including themed video series, as well as beginner's guides from standalone emulators to more complex front-end emulation system guides. This channel even supports and showcases modern day games for retro platforms, or more commonly known as homebrew games, as well as offering reviews for physical hardware. Just Jamie will absolutely have something for any preference, and the video uploads are also very frequent too. So if you want a retro gaming channel which appreciates everything from the Sinclair ZX80 to the modern day era arcade games and love the idea of discovering new games from yesteryear, hit subscribe and set notifications so you don't miss out on almost daily content. Ridge Racer took its time to arrive on the Nintendo 64 since its original 1993 release, but N64 owners had their chance to get a bit of arcade history in the year 2000, and with original tracks included too. This is the original game of which the DS was said to be a remake of, which I covered a little earlier in this video. We have 4 playable cars from the start of the game with a total of 25 once-all unlocks through game progression. Nintendo boasted at the time of this game's release of having a total of 9 unique tracks, but in reality we actually get 2 courses from Ridge Racer as well as 1 original course. We then get variations of some of these courses as well as courses in reverse. But really, could you blame Nintendo? This was a console exclusive and still is to date, I believe. As I begin playing through the game, prior to this we get lots of options to play around with, including screen size adjustments and brightness settings. We can also select between quick race as well as the Grand Prix mode. I chose to play with the Grand Prix mode. We firstly select a car to race with, and bear in mind I only have the default of 1 to 4 cars to choose from at this point, as I haven't unlocked the rest yet. We can then customise the colour of the car with a slide rather than having the bog standard colours that we're all used to. The race begins, and for me personally, I love the first person perspective of this game. There is a noticeable difference here from the arcade game. It's the rear view mirror in the top centre of the screen, and this comes in handy as the rival cars are fairly fierce here, so it's always handy to know what's coming from behind us. I also like the effect of car lights that blur whilst racing through tunnels. It gives it that PlayStation 2 motion vibe where vehicle lights blur around as they're moving. It adds to that speed effect. And talking about speed, this game moves nicely with no slowdowns. It's a very fast game to play, and providing you play this with either a CRT TV or through emulation using a shader, this game looks awesome still. And on top of that, it's running at a full 60 FPS. This game looks so great that I fired it up on my real N64 with Summer Kart 64 and was amazed to see of how well this game still holds up. The music is also very nicely designed that maintains that whole 90s arcade vibe. And of course we can select between a few tracks prior to races beginning too. In terms of controls, I mean, I won't lie with you, this one took me a good few minutes to get the grips with. But having said that, many N64 games were like that. Remember the first time you ever played GoldenEye using the N64 stock controller? This is a great version of Ridge Racer and ranks right up there alongside Mario Kart 64.
Oh yeah, the course is in excellent condition.
Just like the Nintendo 64 version and its so-called remake for the Nintendo DS, this launch title for the PSP, which released in 2005, has much more added, but let's face it, at its core, the original arcade game and even the PlayStation games were fairly basic in terms of content, but its versions which came much later in life, which kept the core main races intact and added much more to them to give them more of a substantial feel. This released as running at a steady 60 FPS. What Nintendo can do, Sony could do very clearly. There is no doubt that this was a stunning game in its day, which were elegantly designed from the menu options to the game itself. What made this best is the introduction of nitro boosts, and we can use these for the original Seaside route too, and it's a totally welcome addition to the game, and slight modernisation too. We all know that Ridge Racer is pretty much all about drifting around corners and having good control over it. This is seamless here, and the best thing is that our nitro meter will increase if we successfully control a drift without crashing in the process. We can actually have up to 3 boosts stored at any one time. There are 24 courses in total. Again, a little like other versions in this video, some of these are mixed courses, whereas others are brand new. Personally, I would say this was the best racing game for the PSP, although I am biased as I love arcade racers. In addition to everything else, it even features a wireless multiplayer mode too. In a nutshell, Ridge Racer for the PSP is old school in gameplay and design, but manages to pull off a very slick and modern look for the time of its release. And that's every port of Ridge Racer today. I would imagine I'll likely get slammed for not putting Ridge Racer 64 in first place, but hey, this isn't an official ranking. As always, just my humble opinion weighing up the pros and cons of each game. If you are new to this arcade port series, I'll drop a link in the comments section to my playlist, and you can see what I've uploaded so far in this series. Anyways, let us know if you have great memories of playing this game. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay retro.